Hi, it's Paula. This is Whoever Holds the Stone, and I don't have a stone right now, but I'm here with Sanford and Richard, and of course my son Tom on drums. And we are going to be doing the show remotely because we're having a really bad weather day. So I have been reading or listening to on Libby, which is something I talk about a lot, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I read years ago and I loved, but I couldn't remember why I loved it. So I thought I would listen to it. And if you are interested in listening to it, the library has 24 copies of the audiobook. So I don't think they'll be out. Anyway, I started reading it and I realized that the character of Lord Henry is definitely Oscar Wilde. It's his persona. It's how he's getting his hedonistic ideas across to an audience through a character. And I just want to read this passage, which is on the long side. And I know I'm always reading long things. Okay. So this is about influence. And Dorian Gray says, "Have you really a very bad influence, Lord Henry? As bad as Basil says?" And then Lord Henry, "There's no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral. Immoral from the scientific point of view." "Why?" says Dorian Gray. "Because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul. He does not think his natural thoughts or burn with his natural passions. His virtues are not real to him. His sins, if there are such things as sins, are borrowed. He becomes an echo of someone else's music, an actor of a part that has not been written for him. The aim of life is self-development. To realize one's nature perfectly, that is what each of us is here for. People are afraid of themselves nowadays. They have forgotten the highest of all duties, the duties that one owes to oneself. Of course, they are charitable. They feed the hungry and clothe the beggar, but their own souls starve and are naked. Courage has gone out of our race. Perhaps we never really had it. The terror of society, which is the basis of morals, the terror of God, which is the secret of religion, these are two things that govern us. And yet I believe that if one were to live out his life fully and completely, were to give form to every feeling, expression to every thought, reality to every dream, I believe that the world would gain such a fresh impulse of joy that we would forget all of the maladies of medievalism and return to the Hellenic ideal, to something finer, richer than the Hellenic ideal. It may be. But the bravest man among us is afraid of himself. The mutilation of the savage has its tragic survival in the self-denial that mars our lives. We are punished for our refusals. Every impulse that we strive to strangle broods in the mind and poisons us. The body sins once and has done with its sin, for action is a mode of purification. Nothing remains then but the recollection of a pleasure or the luxury of a regret. The only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. Resist it, and your soul grows sick with longing for the things it is forbidden to itself, with desire for what its monstrous laws have made monstrous and unlawful. It has been said that the great events of the world take place in the brain. It is in the brain and the brain only that the great sins of the world take place also. You, Mr. Gray, you yourself, with your rose-red youth and your rose-white boyhood, you have had passions that made you afraid, thoughts that have filled you with terror, daydreams and sleeping dreams whose mere memory might strain your cheek with shame.
Great quote. Oh, look, we got a comment. Brian is reminding us that
Oh,
Jesus governs us all.
yes, Brian, I know. And you know what? I have to feel somewhat envious of you for your faith because I don't have that. And I'm not saying I agree with this, Brian. This really, it was shocking to me when I reread this. What I'm saying is it's beautifully written and it's really and I said, God, that's got to be Oscar Wilde. So what I did was I asked AI, as I usually do. I said, is Lord Henry an avatar for Oscar Wilde in the book? And it said that Wilde's philosophy, Lord Henry embodies Wilde's hedonistic and atheistic philosophies, reflecting his views on art and life, wit and charm. Both Lord Henry and Wilde share a sharp wit and charm, often captivating those around them. Influence on Dorian. Lord Henry's influence on Dorian mirrors Wilde's own impact on society and his contemporaries. Critique of morality. Lord Henry's disregard for conventional morality parallels Wilde's critiques of Victorian societal norms. Don't forget, this was written in Victorian times. So, maybe we're thinking of it in a, because right now there's way less restriction than in Victorian times. And so, I mean, this is to me, this it was just a no-brainer. I knew it was, I knew it was Oscar Wilde. I saw Oscar Wilde's tombstone when I was in Paris, and it was a Sphinx, and the Sphinx had red lipstick marks all over it. People, obviously, men and women, came from all over to kiss his tombstone. And there used to be a penis on it, but somebody removed that as a little souvenir. So, that's my. So, Richard, what do you think of that?
Oh, I got a lot of things to say about that. Well, first of all, Vanessa chipped in and she says, do you really trust AI? And my response to that would be, it's one more interpretation. What's wrong with that? I use it all the time.
I didn't need to ask AI this question. I knew enough about Oscar Wilde to know myself. I just wanted some language to express it. So that's basically, I knew that Oscar Wilde was a hedonist, and he ended up he went to prison because he for sodomy, because being a homosexual was against the law back then.
Oh, I see Vanessa's commenting on, we cannot have a good show without Vanessa. And that we are gullible AF.
Well, I think you know what? I hope I am a little gullible. I hope that I haven't become so cynical in my old age that I mistrust everything. I like the fact that I can still be fooled. I like the fact that I can still be taken, by people, because if you don't have any trust, you can't connect with people,
So,
but anyway, go ahead, Richard. I stopped you in the middle.
Okay, so we have an ideology that is being proposed here. Now, it's sort of self-contradictory. Because on the first part of that quote, Lord Henry is saying, you shouldn't be influenced by other people, because then it takes away from your soul. It's not who you really are. And you will recall when Sanford was writing his novel, you and I offered to help him with it, and he said, I wouldn't want that because then it wouldn't be me. He was following that exact same ideology. Right. I don't want to be influenced. Remember that, Sanford?
I do.
Okay.
I still feel the same way. But I mean, it's not possible not to be. We're social beings, right? I mean, nothing comes from nothing. Nothing comes from a vacuum.
Right.
Rich, I want to let you finish what you're saying, because I have some things to say about Oscar Wilde and the quote and Dorian Gray as well. But I'd like to hear whatever else you have to say, Richard.
Okay, so the contradiction is, so Lord Henry says this thing, you shouldn't be influenced. At the same time, he's trying to influence the young person, Dorian. He's trying to influence him with his ideas.
And he does. Dorian was a piece of clay, and with that first initial conversation that they had, he molded him.
And then the next thing is, so what is he trying to influence him with? He's trying to influence him with the belief that the only things worth having are beauty and the pursuit of pleasure. And that's why Dorian needs to have this magical painting done, because if he has it done, his youth will never fade.
Right. Well, the painting wasn't meant to be magical. The painting was just done by, this prominent painter of the time. And what happened is Dorian looked at it, and because of what Lord Henry said to him about how he's going to lose his beauty as he gets older, Dorian started thinking, and as a young person, like 20 years old, he didn't really think of the implications of that. And he said he would give his soul to have the painting get old and not him.
So
he basically sold his soul to the devil.
So then this ties into a conversation I've had with Vanessa, who has been commenting nonstop regarding the show. But Vanessa loves K-pop, and I critiqued K-pop with Vanessa, and I said, how come there's nobody that is in a different decade of their life in that genre? It's all people in their 20s. Like, it doesn't celebrate the other phases of life, which ties into this thing, that beauty and youth go together. Whereas I think there's beauty in every decade of our lives.
Yeah, I do too. I'm convinced that some people just become, yes, the physical beauty part, there's a small window of opportunity there. When I tell people my turn, I had a long turn, my turn is over now. And I don't mind that because I've got other things in my life. But if you're a person like Dorian Gray, didn't have much else in he was still young. He hadn't really examined who he was or what he was about. And so his beauty was all he had. So when that's the case, when you lose your beauty, you lose everything. And that's why I'm always counseling women to make sure they have something else in their life, because the beauty part, it gets you a lot of freebies, but it doesn't last.
Well, there's an interesting quote. Goes like this. As a woman ages, her beauty transforms from the light bulb to the light.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I think that's a very healthy way to approach it.
Yeah, and there are times I if I'm going someplace and I'll put makeup on or whatever, but it's freeing. And I've said this before on the show. It's freeing to be able to walk down the street and not be harassed. It's freeing. I can walk past a group of guys and smile at them and say hello, and I'm not worried about my safety. Because they're not going to knock me down, and it's another way of being. And I feel, because I had a lot of that in my youth, a lot of it. And so I don't miss it. Some women miss it because they haven't bothered to develop anything else in their, they haven't developed anything else in their personalities. They just were about beauty. And that's a very shallow way to live your life. And that's how Dorian Gray is living. He believes that once he loses his beauty, he loses everything.
Okay, now Sanford, you had a critique of the quote. What is yours?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to say. First of all, Oscar Wilde was a great artist, a great poet. Very lyrical, and such a beautiful speaker, from what I understand. He could
Yeah.
speak publicly just beautifully, right? I saw Vincent Price in an interview one time, and I don't know if you're aware of this. Vincent Price, many years ago in the 70s, did a one-man show of Oscar Wilde. And he was
No,
asked
I didn't.
Yeah, he was asked to quote something. And there's a poem that Oscar Wilde wrote called The Harlot's House. And I recommend that you go on YouTube and just look up Vincent Price, Harlot's House. It's really stunning. It's absolutely awe-inspiring. My jaw hit the floor. It's beautiful. But in any event, not only was Oscar Wilde an artist, but I think there was a real cognitive dissonance in all of his promotion of do what you feel, narcissism, beauty, do whatever you want, no consequences, there's no God. I think that he was clearly aware that there was a problem with this philosophy. And it was very prescient because that's how we live today. And remember, Freud was just around the corner, and Oscar Wilde was contemporary with Nietzsche. What did Nietzsche say? God is dead. And I'm not a religious man, but what do you replace him with? Because I think what Nietzsche meant was all of the old traditional values are being questioned and challenged, right? And that was a big blow to human beings. And we haven't really replaced it with anything. I think you can do that on an individual level, but culturally and socially, we have not. And in the novel, there's a terrible consequence for what Dorian does. He preserves his youth in a painting, and he goes out and he does all these things that he wants to do, all of these lustful things, all of these sensual things, all this wallowing in what we all think we want, But the consequence is grim and horrific. And he commits murder. He becomes a monster. And the painting is a reflection of that monstrosity, this ugly, pestilent monstrosity. And he dies at the end, guilty of terrible, terrible crimes. And I think Oscar Wilde was aware, whether he was consciously aware or unconsciously aware, he was aware that there was a problem with that kind of narcissistic philosophy. And, Freud, same thing. He said that if we can just be liberated from our sexual repression, anxiety will go away. Well, I don't think there's ever been a period in history when we're less sexually repressed. All you have to do is go online and PORN, and there it is. And yet, depression, suicide is at an all-time high, I think. Anxiety, addiction, all these things are of epidemic levels, and it hasn't liberated us. It hasn't freed us. I'm not suggesting that we should turn to Jesus or some religion, but it hasn't worked. And I don't know. But I think that it's all within that book. The germ of that idea of that reality. I
agree. I agree with you. But he did live his life as a hedonist. But the thing is, he was aware. Of course, he was aware. He was a smart guy. He just wanted to live by his own rules. And I think that now it is the responsibility of the individual to create meaning in their lives. And that's hard. Not everybody wants to do it. It's much easier just to take somebody else's ideas and use them in place of that deep, penetrating thought that you have to have in order to come up with the reason for your existence and the reason you want to stay alive. So that is utter freedom. That's freedom, but to be able to go deep and come back and say, this is why I am alive. This is why I'm here. These are my morals. This is how, because if all atheists were immoral, that would be a, you could point to that, but they're not. Atheists are not immoral. They're humanists, right? I love the idea of being free to come up with my own meaning. I love that, and to be repressed by religion and the power structures is very limiting. It's limiting, but a lot of people need that, and that they need that direction. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to give it to someone who doesn't know how to get it for themselves. Do you have any ideas about that, Richard?
I have ideas about other things in Sanford's critique.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was very inspiring what you said. So let's look at the ending of the novel. So Dorian Gray has a public face and a private face. And the public face is very beautiful, and the private face gets uglier and uglier and uglier as the novel goes on. Until Dorian finally decides, this private face is so hideous, I must destroy it. So he stabs the painting, and that in turn kills Dorian. Which is interesting. Like, you cannot destroy your private face.
Yeah. Isn't that like social media? Like, we're projecting a public face that isn't real.
Yes.
This fake image of beauty. And the real person, we don't know who we are. I mean, I think I do, but I think it's easy to get lost in that ocean of narcissistic selfies and trying to show off a fake image, and then you forget who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're lucky because we're older and we lived without that for many years of our lives. And we're not young people who have grown up with it. And so it's their normal, basically it's.
Sadly.
But,
so I just thought of something. Do you think if your private face is different from your public face, just like Dorian Gray, it'll bother you, except what a lot of people do is they drink. They self-medicate so that they don't feel bad about their private face.
Yeah. And I'm okay. And then you can go even a step further. And as a Jungian says, you need to embrace your dark side, which doesn't mean you need to give it reign over your life. It just means that you need to acknowledge the dark things in your personality. So, in order to have a full life, be fully actualized, you have to know those things about yourself that are negative.
Our friend Brian is commenting. He says there's so many fake people online, it's hard to tell if anyone's real unless in person.
Yeah, I think that people, you become an avatar of yourself. You want people to think, you want people to like you. I mean, we're human beings. We want people to like us. We want people to think we're special. We want people to, maybe even be a little jealous of our lives. But everybody's got problems. No human being on earth, I don't care how much money you have, can escape sickness, death, all of the sickness of a loved one, physical injury, pain. There's so many things that we all experience alike. But online, it seems like some people have these lives that just sail over the surface, but they're not. They're not real. You have to know that. Every person alive has something they're dealing with.
Now, could we say that, in a way, the portrait of Dorian Gray, without realizing it, is predicting social media?
Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, but it wouldn't be the online persona it's the online persona stays beautiful, and the person behind it doesn't.
Yeah, and the consequences are equally toxic.
Well said,
for the ones who are projecting that image. One other thing about Dorian Gray or Oscar Wilde, unless you guys have more to say about it, you guys know I love movies, and there are 3 really interesting film versions. 1945, Albert Lewin, the director, made a film version with Angela Lansbury and Herb Hatfield played Dorian. It's very good. There's an interesting one, and I have an image of it here. 1970, Il Dio chiamato Dorian, which in Italian means the God called Dorian, like falling from heaven.
Sure.
Yeah.
The English title is The Secret of Dorian Gray. It was made in 1970, and it's a very homoerotic, sort of a hip 1960s, rock and roll kind of a version of Dorian Gray with the helmet burger, very beautiful looking man. I don't know if you know who he was. And then in the 70s, do you remember Dark Shadows, that TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Barnett Collins? The guy who did that, whose name I just can't think of off the top of my head, did a phenomenal TV movie of the picture of Dorian Gray, of the portrait of Dorian Gray, which is really, really well done. And I think that of the three, I think that was the best one, actually.
In any of those movie versions, is the story changed? I mean, you said it's updated, but do they have the same ending and everything?
The ending is the same in all three film versions. It's basically the same story. Yeah. But all of them are worth seeing. Just thought I'd mention that.
I mentioned that because I'm okay with people changing classic stories.
Well, the 1970 version, the homoerotic version, the Italian one, is very different. But it gets into fashion photography and drugs and the 60s and late 60s culture and all that. So it is quite different, but the basic themes are the same, and the basic structure of the narrative is the same. There's a painting. He falls in love with himself. There's a Lord Henry character who has a different name, and he corrupts Dorian, and Dorian does all these awful things, becomes a horrible person, and murders somebody, and then at the end destroys the painting, and he ends up looking like the painting when he dies. So it's the same story,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I guess knowing the life of Oscar Wilde, I can't help thinking that a lot of the dialogue between Lord Henry and Dorian Gray has to do with homosexuality, even though it's not explicit in the book.
He couldn't be. Yeah, he couldn't be at that time.
No, exactly.
Does the portrait of Dorian Gray relate at all to Brigitte Bardot, who just died?
I saw that she died, but I didn't hear anything about it. And how would you connect those two?
Okay, so what happened is she got discovered in the 1950s, and the New York Times said was they did a great thing about the death of Brigitte Bardot. Listen to this. It says, Brigitte Bardot's death symbolized the death of a generation. A woman who tried to find a path to autonomy in the 50s and 60s. She was a post-war woman who was in control, liked men, and convinced that she could manipulate them to her whims. But the thing that makes it parallel to the portrait of Dorian Gray is she retired at the age of 39. And she said, from this point forward, no more movies. From this point forward, I'm going to fight for the rights of animals, which a lot of people praised her for. And a lot of people, she stayed into the limelight because of that. She was traveling to Canada when there was a seal hunt going on, and she was intervening. She was doing a lot of things. But they were also asking her about other aspects of the culture, at which point she said very harsh things about gay people, harsh things about Muslims, and harsh things about women's liberation. So now that she's deceased, the French people are wondering, well, who do we celebrate? Brigitte Bardot 1.0 or 2.0? Are we going to celebrate the Dorian Gray public image or the private image, which was very dark and right wing, and
I didn't know that about her. That surprises.
And she was
I don't know why it surprises me.
She was unrepentant when she was in her 80s. They said, "Do you regret all the harsh things you said?" And she goes, "Hell no, that's me. You get everything when you get me."
But
Well, I want to just say I want to say hello to Mick, who told us he's here again. Hi, Mick.
Oh, that's great.
Of course, hello, Vanessa. We already talked about you, but yeah, I can see you. Yeah, that I didn't know that about Bridget Bardot. That's very disappointing, actually. I don't know. I guess
Go ahead, Sanford.
Yeah, go ahead.
To be fair to Brigitte Bardot, first of all, I don't know what she said about homosexuals, Muslims, or feminism that was so offensive. And if we looked at it, maybe it isn't that offensive. I mean, people are entitled to their opinion, and it doesn't necessarily make her a fascist or a far right. I mean, in today's climate, whatever you say is demonized, you know? So
yeah,
I don't think that's
yeah,
necessarily for a bad person. In fact, some people that I have loved the best in my life, whom I would trust and absolutely with my life, were not well liked, and they were not conventionally considered good people. You know what I mean? So I'm rather skeptical of that cancel culture mentality that demonizes people just because they have opinions that you don't like. So I don't. She might have been a wonderful person.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sanford. It's that because there is a super sensitivity now to all of that, and I guess I agree with that idea that I'd like to see it for myself, because I don't think every comment or every action that we look at now as horrible. It was horrible at the time. So, I mean,
well, why don't I just tell you what the quotes were?
Okay, go ahead.
Here's one. Our ancestors, our grandfathers, and our fathers have for centuries given their lives to push out the invaders of France. We have a new invader. It's called Islam.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I would actually... I would agree that jihadism and Islamism and radical Islam is a serious threat. And if that's what she's referring to, I agree with her 100%.
Here's another quote. I like Marie Le Pen a lot. I won't hide it. She's the only woman who has balls who's willing to say what a lot of people are thinking.
Well, I don't see what's wrong with that quote. I could see her admiring. I don't know, who is that woman that she was talking about?
She leads a party that wants all Islamic people expelled from France.
Oh, all right. Well, you know, she's got she does have opinions, and I don't know. I'm stuck in a weird place between what was true half of my life ago and what has become true now. And sometimes the hyper sensitivity gets on my nerves. I mean, I'm a screaming liberal, but the hypersensitivity is going to get on my nerves. You know, if somebody in 1978 went to a Halloween party as Michael Jackson and he did blackface, that is not the same as someone. I mean, it's not great, but I don't think that the intention was to humiliate African Americans. I think it was because they really liked Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
So in some cases, I have to push back a little bit. But so I had another thing I wanted to read, something I got from Lori after our last show.
Okay.
Do we have? Okay. All right. So we were talking about quantum consciousness. And I just thought this was interesting. I don't know if I agree with every line of this, but I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. The thing I want to bring up is quantum mind, is the quantum mind concept. I have for about 40 years been telling people I know how ESP and such things work, and it's not anything bizarre. When I was taking electronic courses in the early 2020s and the early 20s, in the I'm getting confused about where we are. And in my early 20s, I'm sorry, I missed that word. I learned how radio and television and a host of other things like radar work. It's amazing. We live in a world where electromagnetic signals are created by natural phenomenon and by items we build, like power transmission lines and others. They are everywhere, passing through some things and being blocked or disrupted by others. They pass through us for the most part without us ever being aware. These waves are These waves are comprised of many frequencies, some short waves, some long ones. The simple radio transmitter will be turned to emit a base signal over one particular frequency. Riding on this broadcast wave is another wave, an information signal wave. Picture little worms riding on a big, long worm. A radio receiver can be tuned to that broadcast wave, and then a thing called a detector or demodulator peels off the information wave and processes it so that the information sent can be heard through a speaker. This is going on all around us and through us every day. It's how we communicate with cell phones, Wi-Fi, etc. Now, if radios and televisions and cell phones can be tuned to a specific frequency, why couldn't our brains do the same? Maybe not always by intent, but maybe by familiarity or something. I have had a few experiences where someone I was close to, was far away from me, and yet I thought something specific, and that person later told me that very specific thing, not vaguely, specifically. Something unusual that couldn't be explained otherwise, not just once, and not the same person. Maybe some people are more adept at this kind of communication. It's not a matter of being psychic. It's an explainable phenomenon of energy transmission.
That's a nice summary of quantum consciousness.
Yeah, I really liked the way she wrote that out, and she connected it to learning about electronics in her 20s and how the waves work. And I thought, it's an idea, right? This is how I always broach things, as an idea. It doesn't mean it's true. It's just an interesting idea.
Right. That's exactly how I took the whole quantum consciousness thing. Is let's form a hypothesis about why certain things happen the way they do.
Right. Yeah. So that was as a remark from last week's show.
Yeah.
That would have been a hell of a text.
Sanford, Paula gave me a link to a little talk about the quantum mind.
Okay.
And basically, what it's about is that, in quantum physics, if the observer measures the results of an experiment, it changes the results of the experiment. Are you familiar with that phenomenon?
Idea, yeah.
Yeah. And so it forms a hypothesis that it isn't the measurement that's changing it, it's the fact that a human mind is interacting on this level of energy. And then it starts into a bunch of what ifs. What if the human mind is always interacting on this level of energy? And what if you get a feeling that your spouse is about to come home unexpectedly and then they show up at the door is because you tapped into the energy of consciousness, which was the same as theirs on their drive home?
Yeah, that's pretty deep and pretty heavy. I look at it a little bit differently. The author whose name just isn't coming to me right now, who wrote that magnificent book on the right and left brain that I shared with you some time ago on the podcast, he talks about that. And he said that, think of it this way: consciousness and the experience of life changes the observer, but it also in some way changes that which is observed. It's a relationship. We have a relationship with reality, right? My presence here changes the reality that I'm in, and the reality that I'm in changes me. And I thought that was a beautiful way to describe it, that is a bit much more grounded and something that I can relate to. and I mean no disrespect to the quantum idea. It's just that's pretty lofty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think that they're you know what we think about often results in our lives. You know, if you constantly have horrible negative thoughts, you're probably not going to get the most positive result in your life. And if
Absolutely.
you think more optimistically and you're teleologically or you're etiologically motivated. Etiology is causation. All that shit that's happening in my life, it's dragging me down. Or do you see the future and where do you want to go? Are you goal oriented?
Yeah.
And I think that things do change when you think a certain way. So in that sense, it seems more practical to me. But
well,
again, I mean, no, well, you know. I'm sorry, Paul. I interrupted.
No, that's okay. No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. But what you said just reminded me of something that always blows my mind when I think about it. Every single thing that is on this earth that is man-made happened first in somebody's mind.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
So everything, anything electronic, anything ceramic, anything wooden, anything that was made by man, first had to be an idea, a thought. Yeah. And that just, when I think about that for a long period of time, it blows my mind because it's everything that we live with every day. I mean, the only things that don't count are vegetation, but even vegetation, even some kinds of roses have been created artificially by man. Yeah, and when I say man, I mean people. You know, I'm mankind is a word that I don't object to.
I understand. Yeah, so it's spirit before it's matter, maybe, or there's certainly a relationship. When I say spirit, I don't mean religion.
Now, earlier in the day, Sanford sent me a text message, and he talked about all the things he was planning to do in his life, and then at the end he said, "All transformation begins in the mind with ideas." And we're talking about it on the show now. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that when, Greg and I have been meditating every day for about a year now. It's been actually a little bit over a year because it was consequential of him having a bad time in the fall of 2024. So it's and all of these positive suggestions during this meditation are helpful, telling you to release these bad thoughts because they're doing harm and they're not serving you in any way, and to get rid of that negativity. Negativity doesn't serve you. I mean, it's a drag, like Sanford said, it drags you down. But it's so hard to break out of the past because the past is all we know. To be able to create a future that's different and better, you have to let go of that. And that's hard. It's hard work.
It is, yeah. And something has to die for you to move forward. You got to let go of that to some degree and for something new to be born. Can I, unless somebody else has something to say, can I take the phone for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
About a week ago, I was, on YouTube, and you know how these ads come up and things like that are very annoying. And this woman came on, and she said, "Guys, I'm reading this book, and it's just life-changing, and it's amazing. And when I first read the title, I thought it was just going to be one of these self-help books, but it's actually about the principles of Adlerian psychology, Alfred Adler." And right away, I listened. And I'm starting a unit on Monday next week on personality, which will take a couple of weeks. And Adler's ideas are ideas that I just touched upon thumbnail sketch. I didn't really go into him in any depth. And I did not realize that Freud and Jung usually are spoken of as the two major psychoanalysts at the birth of psychoanalysis. But Adler, just as significant, And like Jung departed from Freud for his reasons, Adler departed from Freud for his own reasons. And the book that this woman was praising to the heavens, and it does sound like a corny self-help book, but it's not. The Courage to be Disliked. I don't know if you can see that.
So you purchased the book.
I bought it, and it's Japanese. Ichiro Kishima is an Adlerian psychologist. Fumitake Koga is a writer who was inspired by the ideas of Adler and this Japanese psychologist, and together they wrote a book about the principles of Adlerian psychology in the form of a dialogue, 5 dialogues between an elderly philosopher and an impulsive, impetuous young man. And this young man keeps asking questions to this philosopher, and it's all, again, a way to illustrate the principles of Adler's ideas on personal development and personality. And if I could just see the blurb. And I also got books on Adler. I've got some of Adler's books here. I don't know if we keep flashing on, and I don't know if you can see it. I flashed off there for a second. It's called The Individual Psychology of Alfred Adler, and I've got 2 more on the way.
What's going on?
They're like $12 a piece. So this book, this is what the blurb says, and it's germane to what we're talking about not being bound by the past. Here's the blurb: Is happiness something that you choose for yourself? The Courage to be Disliked presents a simple and straightforward answer. Using the theories of Alfred Adler, one of the 3 giants of 19th century psychology alongside Freud and Jung, this book follows an illuminating dialogue between a philosopher and a young man. Over the course of 5 conversations, the philosopher helps his student to understand how each of us is able to determine the direction of our own life, free from the shackles of past traumas and the expectations of others. And what I found really powerful about the principles in the book is the term that I used already, etiological motivation or teleological motivation. And etiological says, I've got anxiety and I'm depressed and I'm a drug addict and I've got problems because things happened to me when I was a kid, because because I was abused, because I got bullied, right? Teleological motivation says, look forward, and there's great power in a final goal of where you want to go, even if it's fictional. It will get you out of that path that so many of us, and I'm not exempt from this, drag from one calendar month, one calendar year to the next, and you're 50, 60 years old, and you still got the same monkey on your back. But Adler says you have to take radical responsibility for your own problems and move forward and look to the future instead of constantly focusing on the past, which is what Freud did. Freud believed that if you these epiphanies and you touch with all these unconscious, repressed and suppressed sexual aggressive trauma, you're going to be on the road to recovery. Adler says, no, don't look at the shit. Get your nose out of the shit and look up. Where do you want to go? And I really profound. It also, Richard and I and James and maybe you and Greg, I don't remember if you were part of the conversation. We're talking about on Christmas when we were, and I think we got interrupted by Sal. Richard and I were talking about, are you a determinist? Is your life determined by your circumstances, or do you have the power to change your life? And I think
definitely do. Yeah.
Steel manning the argument that it's deterministic, but I didn't get a chance to hear Richard's perspective on how you can change and how you do have control over your own destiny. Richard,
I'd love to hear that, Richard.
Sure. The counter argument to the everything is determined is the principle that everything in reality changes. Now, if you ascribe to that, which I do, that means that you can never step into the same river twice. So if you, when you go back to your high school reunion, you're not going back to the past. You're going to a situation that has changed totally, but the only thing that hasn't changed are your memories. So it's kind of a there is no determination because it's all contingent upon what's happening around you at the time, which is what Sanford was saying about how important the environment is in shaping your personality. It's the environment that is always changing that's shaping your personality. And you got to keep that in mind. And that's where you get your free will from.
And I don't know anything about this Adler guy. I think it's a hole in my education of the 20th century analysts, psychologists.
You actually do know Alfred Adler, because if you've ever heard of terms like lifestyle, he came up with it. If you've ever heard of the term inferiority complex, in fact, he claims everyone has an inferiority complex. And all of us are trying to overcome insecurities and inferiorities as we develop ourselves as human beings. And again, I'm sorry to go on about this, and it won't take long, but I just want to read this blurb because of what you just said, that you said you don't know who Adler is, and I think this will kind of explain a little bit. There can be no doubt, and this is the other book, this is Adler's own work, the blurb on the back. There can be no doubt that this book is an indispensable reference for all scholarly workers in the fields of personality and abnormal psychology. I just want to skip this one sentence. This book, moreover, at last provides the means for giving Adler the place he deserves in courses which have a historical and theoretical orientation. It seems to me that current theory builders, both young and old, stand to gain in their work by mastering Adler's system and making a place for its major concepts. Adler's ideas have gone into the stream of contemporary thought and have become the accepted clinical common sense of our time. In this process, they have often lost the tag of his name, but they are operating widely to achieve the mission that was closest to his heart. In other words, many ideas that are popular today in psychology come from him, but he is not credited.
Do you think that the idea of cognitive behavioral therapy is something that because that's something I've actually had some of that, and it's way different than other therapy because you're not delving into your past. They ask you what the problem is, what your goal is, and then you make you go forward by creating steps to get to that goal. And that was very helpful for me at the time when I really needed it. But I also thought that while you're doing these steps, you're overcoming some of the fears that you have that were based on those old ideas that you would talk about with a regular therapist. So while you're going forward with the steps that you're given by this cognitive behavioral therapist, you're overcoming because you're proving to yourself that you can do these things. And I think, that's a form of therapy that's helpful for people who are in crisis now, and they can just make a plan. It's almost like a life coach. So it's an excellent form of therapy for people.
Yeah, Aaron Beck is the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, and he was heavily influenced by Adler. Have you heard of rational emotive behavioral therapy, REBT?
No.
Rational
no, I have not.
Albert Ellis, who was also influenced by Adler, and that's the idea that you recognize that cognitively, many of the things you think are irrational. They're cognitive distortions. And if you think rationally,
they're dissonance, cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
So much of what we believe is not sensible. And if you think more rationally, there's a lot more reason to celebrate and to be happy and less anxious, if that makes any sense. But they're connected. Cognitive behavioral and rational emotive behavioral therapy. We're both
someone someone asked what a regular therapist is. A regular therapist is somebody who goes deep down into your past and tries to find out the reasons for why you're acting the way you're acting now. That's not in your best interest. So that's a regular therapist. A cognitive behavioral therapist is somebody who just works on now and going forward. It's a different approach, but I've had both.
Well, I have a practical question related to the Adler topic. Now, as you know, he believed that when you're born, you're very little and everyone around you is very big. So you immediately form an inferiority complex. And then as time goes on, you cope with it in one of three ways. You come to the realization, no, we're all the same. I'm not superior or inferior to any of these people. Or you overcompensate and you feel you're superior to all these other people. Okay, now that's an interesting thing of the different personality types. I have met people with inferiority complexes. What's the best way to behave with them? Do you flatter them a lot? Do you say, oh, you did a very good job at that? Or, like, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how do you help people who have the superiority complex and people who have the inferiority complex?
I'll give that to you, Stanford. You're teaching this stuff.
Yeah, well, I deal with a lot of students who have feelings of inferiority, and I think the way to build confidence is give them a sense of responsibility, and be straight with them. Reality, a slap in the face is good for you. A kick in the ass. Reality is a good teacher. Ice cold water, not literally, but figuratively, is a shock. Being shocked is really good for you, actually. A slap in the face. Telling people straight, what's what. And bringing them back to it over and over again. That is if you're a teacher, if you're in a position of authority. If it's a friend, maybe you have to be slightly more diplomatic because, people are adults and they have the right to do what they want. And I don't think anybody wants to be told what to do or manipulated. But I still think being straight with people, and confronting them with reality. Reality is a great teacher. It helped me out in ways, changed my life.
Honest praise is great. If somebody is good at something and you tell them they're good at something, you say, this is really a great photograph, or this is really a great piece of writing. And you're sincere about it, not that you're blowing smoke up their ass. You're sincere.
Yeah.
Well, and so in that case, it would help, even though they're not going to believe you necessarily if they have a severe inferiority complex. But it's good to hear for anybody. Even if you're not struggling, it's good to hear. You did a good job. This is good work.
Yeah.
And a sense of responsibility to make people feel that they're part of something is important too.
Yeah.
Well, do you think at the end of a baseball season in the Little League, it's a good idea, and a lot of teams do this, they give a trophy to every single member on the team for a different reason? Like, here's your trophy. You showed up for every game. Here's your trophy. You did not complain when you struck out. They really try to find something good to say about every single person so nobody feels left out. And there are other people who criticize that. They say, no, just give it to the, maybe the best hitter or whatever, but don't worry so much about people's inability to be the best.
Yeah, there's, as a kid, we were always, I wasn't good at certain things. I was good at other things, I don't know if I agree with the giving the trophy to everybody, but I think everybody should be made to feel like they're an integral part of a system. You're important to this team. And we've only got 38 seconds to go. So my friends, you're all important to this team. So I'm hopeful that Sanford will be able to come back at some point. I know you're busy with school, but I'd love to hear about I'd like to just talk to you about what you're teaching in class, because I'm fascinated by that. And Richard, thank you again for facilitating. And of course, my son, Tom, thank you so much for showing up and being the engineer. You adorable son, you.